cuffs off, dog. You know what I'm saying? You heard what I said. Take these cuffs off.
Hold on a second then, man.
You know what I'm saying? I'm sick and tired of y'all cops, man. Always acting like y'all hard because y'all got these cuffs on, dog. You don't want none of this. You don't want none of this, homeboy. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, dog. You know what I'm saying? What you want to do? What you want to do, boy? What?
That's what I thought.
Hey, what's going on, y'all? Eric Moultrie here with Code Red Conversations. I figured I'd start the show with a little entertainment, something to put a smile on y'all's face, considering the topic that we're going to be dealing with. I hope everyone's having a good day. I'm here, ready. For those of y'all who are just tuning in, today is basically a continuation to a degree of the conversation that we had last week. Last week we were discussing, I believe it was Friday, we're discussing fat and unfit cops and the danger. Whoops, my bad. And the danger that they offer, or that inherent danger that comes with them in our current culture, in our society. Why am I constantly dealing with these sound effects? Hold on one second, y'all. There we go. I don't know what's going on there. I done dropped the stream and it's still playing. You probably can't even hear it. I don't know. But the inherent danger that an unfit cop brings to the everyday reality of being a citizen, or even their own dangers, like suffering a heart attack or stroking out in the middle of a call, or being the partner, or for the average citizen who's the one who is actually on the other end of the 911 call and who is actually in need. So this week, I decided, because I started having this conversation near the end of the show, but I started discussing ways that people can get fit. And we started having a discussion on the martial arts concept, the idea of cops being able to defend themselves. We got into it a bit last week, but I'd like to unpack that a little bit more this week. Voice is a little raspy, y'all. So I got my hot tea today. Hopefully that'll help keep save my voice so I last through the show. Some black tea, good for the kidneys, good for the vocal cords. At least that's what I'm told. Anyway, I don't know. So we are definitely going to have a good discussion today dealing with these topics here. So let me first, okay, I got to stop this and share this. Let me share with you a couple of videos on this very topic. There's one, I'll show you a video a recent video where an officer, and this is actually someone that I know. This isn't recent. This is probably about let me see, it's 2022. I think this happened around 2015 or so. I was living in Arkansas at the time. I think it was 2015. So let's pull this up here. Let me pause this. Whoops. I want to share this screen here of an incident that took place a few years ago in the county jail here in Las Vegas, Clark County Detention Center. I'm actually friends with the officer involved. We were in the CO Academy together back in 96. And this is an incident. There's no sound here, but you'll just see what happened. There's an incident that took place where he is in the typical housing unit. Now, I'm not sure how well you can see what goes on in a housing unit over in what is known as the South Tower. It's the newer end of the county jail. See if I can make this a little bigger. I think that's about as big as it'll get. Yeah, that was about as big as it gets. Anyway, this is a surveillance camera. He's on the 3rd floor. 3K is the module. On the right side over here, you see the chairs or the tables. That's where the inmates. Whoops, let me pause this here. On the right side here, you see the chairs where the inmates eat, the tables, and you'll see the all these little. You see a bunch of bunks. That's where all the inmates sleep. And right below that, you see here the officer station. So the officer is out in the open over at the South Tower. There's nowhere where he can hide if something goes down. Really, he'd have to put himself in the sally port over here, the 3K, where the sliding doors are, which will come into play a little bit later. And hopefully, I have the full extended video. But there was an officer who got into a verbal altercation with an inmate who I'm also familiar with, who I got into. Me and him clashed, not ever physically, but we clashed on multiple occasions verbally. He's just one of them guys that's constantly in and out of jail, and he just has an attitude all the time. This dude's just a jerk, straight up. And this guy, let me put the chat on. If y'all can hear me well, make sure you jump in the chat. What's up, Dwayne? Thanks for being here. As always, I can always count on you, brother. I definitely appreciate it. And we need to talk, matter of fact, for things we got planned, because I know our schedules have been all jacked up, but I'm still on for it. Just we got to make sure we clarify things. Anyway, this guy was basically just a knucklehead. So this officer here was having, I don't know what was going on. I don't know all the details. I heard rumors, but I'll let the video play out and I'll talk it out. I've heard rumors that the officer was instigating. I'm not sure, and he didn't necessarily have the best communication skills. And that's one aspect that can play a role. But let's just look. Oh, and let me paint the picture also. When this officer and I, what's up, Mark? Man, it's a long time no see, brother. I was thinking about you yesterday, man. I'm wishing you were still on Facebook. But we gotta talk more. Anyway, when I went to the academy, the first academy, my corrections officer academy in 1996, this officer went through the academy with me as well. And he was retired from the military. So you're looking somewhere in his late 30s at best, early 40s. So this is back in 96. So you fast forward this incident to 2015, 2016 or so. So you're talking about a dude who ain't a spring chicken. I mean, let's just call it what it is. I'm sorry, inside joke. Hey, Larry, was that 2015 when this went down? Because I remember you're the one that kind of hit me to it, if I'm not mistaken. Me and you were talking. But yeah, help me remember what year that went down, brother, if you can. Anyway, let me stay on topic, man. You done messed me up with that crust. Inside joke, y'all. Forgive me. But so he was already, I would say, so you're talking dude was in his 60s, roughly. Dude was close to his 60s, if not in his 60s. And he's still working the housing unit with inmates, as unpredictable as that can be. I have my thoughts on older officers working in certain environments. I think that if you're going to work in an environment like that, you had better be able to take care of yourself. You had better be physically fit. You better have your skills sharpened, like seriously sharpened, because not every inmate is in their right frame of mind. Not every inmate is going to give a damn whether you are 50, 60, 70 years old or what. They just, some people, if they feel as if they're being disrespected, some people just don't care. Now, the majority of guys will basically just deal with it and move on. But you have some that just don't care. So you have to be ready for that, period. If you don't feel like you can handle working on a unit or on the streets when you're coming in contact with somebody who's violent, there are places you can work where you don't have suspect or inmate contact. It's pretty simple, pretty easy. Anyway, so long story short, they clash, they have words, and let's just let the video play out. That's them right down there. Now the fight's on. Inmate's on top of him. The inmate's got some size too. He wasn't a small guy. He's got the advantage right here, the officer. But the inmate's throwing punches. He's throwing punches. He's fighting. He throws his leg up. I don't know if he had any ground skills whatsoever, the inmate. But I'm not sure what kind of tactics the officer had here. But he's in a bad position right here. Inmate's throwing punches, steadily throwing punches at him. And the crazy part about it is, and this is what I've learned over the years. Now, it depends on what housing unit you're in and what kind of rapport you've developed with inmates. But if you are respected by the inmates, they'll typically be there and they'll pull somebody off if things get bad. And it looks like he's got him in some kind of a head scissors thing. He's got his legs scissored around the officer's head, and the officer is unable to get up. He's trying a little bit. He's probably out of gas right now, but he is completely unable to get up, and the dude's got him locked down. And here you see somebody, I don't know if someone called, but now you see an officer arrive on scene. And I'm sure my man is wiped. I'm sure he's spent, because I can recall the first time I started doing any kind of grappling or ground training, I was done, dude. I was done. But thankfully I stuck with it and I developed some level of proficiency. Now the cavalry shows up trying to get everyone under control. Whoops, I'll pause it right here. But that is an example of what can be expected if you get into a confrontation with an inmate. If you don't know what you're doing, all due respect to my man, like I said, good dude. I mean, I got along with him, and not everybody did, but that's neither here nor there. But if you are lacking in your skills, now I'm not saying you got to be running around here with the last name Gracie or anything like that, but you truly have to have some level of proficiency in what Bruce Lee would have coined or termed, not all, but most ranges of combat. You need to have some level of proficiency. You need to have some level of
take these cuffs off, dog.
Hold on, man.
You know what I'm
Why
saying?
does
You
videos
heard what
keep
I
doing
said.
their
Take
own
these
thing
cuffs
over
off.
here?
Hold on a second then, man.
Hold
You know
on.
what I'm saying?
Videos just got a mind of their own today. Turn this off here. Sorry about that. Yeah, but you have you have suspects, you have inmates, especially living here. Now, living here in Las Vegas, I would say even more so. But then again, the way MMA has taken off around the country, around the world, I would dare say that any cop would be foolish to step into this career field unprepared. Unprepared. Any cop would be foolish to step into this career field unprepared. So here in that video, you saw a prime example of that. And this was relatively recently, 2015 or so. I keep going back and forth, 2015, 2016, 5 years ago. And yes, age played a factor in that confrontation. I'm sure it did. But I'm sorry. You made the decision to continue on in the career field. You didn't transfer to an area where you don't have as much inmate contact. You got to be prepared. I'm not saying I'm unsympathetic to an older officer, Like everybody be talking about that old dude, Buckshot, 90 some years old. Lord, I pray that that man ain't patrolling the streets, responding to any real calls. Like 90 some years old. It's cute and all that. But what's that dude going to do if something goes down? Really? He's going to fall and break his hip. If something worse doesn't happen to him. I'm just not sympathetic to it, y'all. Policing, people say it's a young man's game. I think it's a fit man's game. That's my mindset. You can be older and you can take good care of yourself. To some degree, it's a young man's game. But I think overall, you definitely have to be mindful of what you are physically capable of. And that's another point I want to bring up. I think there are too many people, too many officers who have quote unquote delusions of grandeur. They might have been fit back in the day. They might have been on the wrestling team back in the day, but they haven't hit the gym in 30 years or since they went to the academy, like I was talking about last week. And they assume that because they were able to do something back in the day that they could still do it. When I was in the Army, I ran 2 miles in 12. My best time was 12 minutes and 40 seconds. And I was weighing about 220, 225, 215. So I wasn't a little dude, but my cardio was through the roof because I did cardio all the time, push-ups, sit-ups, and I ran all the time. So I built a pretty solid aerobic base. Man, I couldn't even come close to doing that right now. I would like to. I'm actually training to try to improve that. But right now, at this moment, I couldn't even come close to that time. But and it's not like I'm going to get on the treadmill and try to bust a 12:42 mile. I'm not even thinking about doing that. Not at this stage in the game. That's because I understand my limitations. I understand what I'm capable of as compared to what I did at one point. So we have to have that understanding. We have to know what we can do, what we did then as compared to what we do now. I'm gonna check out some of the chats here. Some people are talking. I don't want to miss anything. According to the National Law Enforcement Officer Memorial Fund, in 2016, there were 58,000 assaults on the police officers and 16,677 assaults that resulted in injuries. Multiple factors will determine if an officer is injured while performing their job. One mitigating factor that officers can control is their own fitness level. Absolutely. And to be even more specific, and I agree, and I appreciate that, Dwayne, even more specific is not only is their fitness level, but their physical ability when it comes to defensive tactics, combatives, however you want to term it. Oftentimes, police agencies want to say defensive tactics because it's not as aggressive sounding. But if you know how to defend yourself in a fight and you actually are in training that actually simulates a combative situation, the odds of you getting hurt are dramatically reduced. Dramatically reduced. I can't stress it enough. There are too many agencies who they get a bug up their behind and they decide that they want to start having some jiu-jitsu guy come in and start training their guys once every couple of years. So guys go through the training and then all of a sudden they get hurt. And then the upper administration sees that and they freak out and they panic. And then they're like, oh, we're not going to have that. No, it's not the fact that the training is not the training alone. It's the lack of fitness on the officers that ultimately led to the injuries. And if you're just bringing in the idea of ground fighting, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, whatever art that you want these guys to start learning, you have to understand that there are steps to this thing. They're baby steps. That's why I'm so big on being careful what school you go to start training. I've been to some jiu-jitsu schools where it's all ego. There's a bunch of dudes. It's like Cobra Kai and freaking Karate Kid. You get a bunch of dudes running around here trying to flex on everybody and jacking up new students and stupid stuff like that, which I actually had happen to me before. But then by the grace of God, I found a school that taught in baby steps, that separated the beginners and taught us how to learn how to control our bodies, learn some basic techniques, learn what the guard is, learn a simple guard pass, simple guard sweeps, shrimping, but basically moving on your back, basic things. And then as time went on, we started doing more and more. They started having us actually rolling or grappling at the end of every class. And then after some time went on, the guys who were in the beginner class moved on to the general class and even on to the advanced class. I think that you have to be wise in your choices and in your decision making. And for anyone out there who was actually considering doing some martial arts and you like some advice, just hit me up. I've been doing martial arts on and off since I was a teenager. And obviously I'm not a teenager anymore. So I have some idea of a good coach, a good school, what's a good school. You call them up, ask them some basic questions. If you have no background whatsoever, or if it's been a long time and you know that you need baby steps and you need to move slowly, there are schools out there that are that fit that. There's some places that aren't. They'll throw you in the deep end of the waters, either sink or swim, and then before you know it, you're injured and you're worse off than you were before. There are good places you can go where you can find good training, where the training staff actually knows what they're doing. And just because someone is skilled in a art doesn't necessarily mean, or they were a good fighter, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're a good coach. Always know that. Do your research, do your studying before you jump into any class. Seems to be a theme in cultural circles right now. Just look at armed self-defense class this past weekend. Just took an armed self-defense class this past weekend. I've also seen several related social media posts since. Thanks for doing this, Eric. Yeah, hey, man, I wish I saw your comment and when you first put it out there. Can you clarify exactly what you were talking about? I'd appreciate it. Let me see what you got here, Larry. Age, yes, but if he trained in BJJ, which is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, his age would not have been a factor. He had side control and didn't know how to maintain control until backup arrived. Absolutely, my man. And like I said, that's why I say it's a fit person's game. Because I think age can play a role, of course, but you and I both know dudes, like I'm 51, going on 52, and I know there's some cats out there. And matter of fact, the last time I was grappling, there were some dudes, a lot of dudes in that class who were way younger than me, and I was able to hang. And I hadn't rolled in years. And so it is ultimately what level of shape you're in. How fit are you right now? How well you take care of yourself. Like I'm not doing any martial art right now. And I definitely plan on rectifying that, Lord willing, this year. But I hit the gym 5 days a week. I stretch every day for a minimum of 30 minutes. That's one of the first things I do when I get out of bed. That's pretty much the first thing I do when I get out of bed. Listen to an audiobook, get up, and I stretch for a half hour. Then later on in my morning, we head on out to the gym. After I warm up, I get another stretch, probably another 10 minutes. So although I'm rusty when it comes, about a year ago, I would say I'm a little rusty, of course. And I think any layoff is bad. But the last time I did any kind of martial arts was about a year ago, maybe a year and a half. And I still showed I still was surprised at how much proficiency I still had, believe it or not. I was a little surprised by that. I was going to show a video of me hitting the mitts and grappling and whatnot. But maybe down the road I'll share it. I just didn't get it up in time. But yeah, it's going back to what you're saying, man. It's a matter of knowing skills, because the cool thing about jiu-jitsu, it can be rough and physically demanding, but it's still the gentle art. And if you know what you're doing when you're moving, you can be real slick. You ain't got to be ultra physical. You ain't got to be the biggest dude in the room. And you can be highly proficient. And going old school, just remember Hoist Gracie back in the day. Dude was about 170, maybe 180 pounds. And he was tapping out dudes 260. Yeah, they didn't know what was going on, but not everybody knows jiu-jitsu. Not everyone knows wrestling. Most people don't. So you can find yourself in an advantageous position in most encounters. AD, just talking about the theme of being fit and ready to fight. Absolutely, bro. Absolutely. And because you'll go to some places and the instructor himself looks like garbage. Honestly, the instructor himself doesn't know, physically is a mess. So it basically, what do you do with that? Personally, I wouldn't trust a guy like that to train me. Hold on, y'all. Trying to find a video here, and every time I click back, it's the same video keeps popping up every time I'm trying to play what's next. All right, next video. Man, oh man, this thing's getting on my nerves today. Okay, next video, y'all. I've been showing a couple in the jail. I'm gonna show one more in the jail, and then I'm gonna transfer out to the streets and show a couple of really scary encounters. Not that the ones in the jail aren't, but the ones I'm about, there's one main one I want to share is really crazy, and it should really push the reason how it's so important for an officer to be able to take care of himself or herself. Whoops. There we go. This took place in Miami-Dade last year. That'll play here in a sec, I hope. Let me refresh this. Oh, here. It keeps showing the same video. Hold on. Technical difficulties, y'all. The problems of a live show. Are they not letting me show it?
Hey, take these cuffs off, dog.
This thing ain't working. Hold on a second.
You heard what I said. Take these cuffs.
Technical. Let me check out some of the comments here. Let me just play this video right here. I got one video on cue. It's not the one I wanted to show, but this one right here is one out. This one pretty much everyone has seen, I believe. And it happened here in Vegas. I think this was cops. Officer conducting a pat search on a suspect. I'm not sure what the details were, but you'll see how antsy this dude is from the beginning, and this thing just escalates.
Do you have anything? What's that right there? You got something squishing there.
My phone.
Okay. All right.
Bro.
Okay.
I'm legit. Like,
Okay.
yeah, bro.
Do you have anything illegal in your pockets? That's all I'm asking. Can I search your pockets?
No, sir.
Okay.
I don't, sir. I don't have it. Come on, man. Don't give me a break, man.
Nice control on top. Grapevine in the legs so he can't do whatever he wants to do.
Dude, no, stop, bro. God damn it. 116.
He lost control once because he had to focus on getting on the radio, call for backup.
Hey, help me, dog. What the? Stop resisting! Stop resisting!
That taser ain't no joke when properly deployed. Now he's going for a side choke.
I'm homeless. Okay. Roll homeless, man.
All right, I got one arm.
Okay. Hey, you got it. I'm okay. My left arm just don't take both.
All right, backup arrives and basically saves the day. But what are some of the things? Put in the chat. What did you see differently from this encounter compared to the first officer that I showed? What are some of the things that you saw differently? Go ahead and post them in the chat, because I already know what I'm thinking, and I probably mentioned them already. But I'd love to know what your thoughts are. In my humble opinion, if a department is concerned about use of force, they should make BJJ mandatory training. I 100% agree, but I can tell you, as someone who's tried to initiate fitness and concepts like that, you will get so much pushback. It is insane. Insane. There'll be officers going to the union, complaining, threatening lawsuits. I'm not, I wish I was joking, bro. I wish I was joking, but I know what it's like, because I tried to initiate, as I mentioned in the last broadcast I did, the idea of a fitness standard, a fitness test on my department. And we're not talking about a small department. We're talking about Las Vegas Metro Police. Not one of the biggest agencies in the world, but you're talking about a massive tourist destination. And we cover a pretty large area when you look at all of Clark County, a few million people. And people looked at me like I was nuts, laughed it off. Were like, man, you gotta be crazy. All right, let's see what you got. He remained in control. Yeah, I mean, that's a given, no doubt. But he definitely remained in control. He was able to stay with him. He was able to stay on top of him for the most part. And when he did lose control, he's able to regain it and went for an actual position, that side choke, that can actually put someone to sleep if applied properly. Is a union an important part of policing? I think it can be. Not maybe, it may not. Has a union help when it comes to raises and things like that? It can play a pretty important role. It can be very helpful. I think it also can be a hindrance at times, but I think having union representation when you go before certain boards, use of force board, or you go in front of internal affairs, it can definitely be beneficial and helpful. LEPFT. LE, is that like personal physical fitness training? Yeah. But sadly, it ain't very popular. It's not well liked. There are too many guys out there who are content with being slobs, or too worried about liability when it comes to dealing with the upper administration, people and higher ranking people. Too many people who are worried about, oh, what could happen? How someone might get injured. There are too many folks worried about that in comparison to what's the long-term impact of an unfit cop, instead of focusing on and how that can impact the citizens, how that can impact other officers. There are too many people who aren't worried about that, sadly. And that's the reality. They'll tell you otherwise. But when it's all said and done, if you are unwilling to seek to establish some standard, some high standard for officers when it comes to their fitness and being able to take care of themselves, as opposed to, well, once every quarter, every few months, you do a couple of hours of defensive tactics. That there's no way anyone is going to build a high level of proficiency with that. No way. It's impossible. You won't develop any real muscle memory, and it'll just lead to liability. And it will lead to officers being more reliant on other tools. And I also believe that if you have cops who are in great shape, cops who are confident in their abilities, combative defensive tactics skills, whatever you want to term it, whatever you want to call it, you're going to use less force. There's very little ego involved. When you know that when you're pretty confident that you can handle your business in most confrontations, if you're trained properly, ego is less of an issue. That at least that was the case in my mind, in my personal experience. Yeah, I think you might have worked with him, didn't you, Larry? Well, he definitely trains. Guys at Bolden confirmed he trains. I like how he took the arm to break down the suspect support. And yeah, that was good. He was aware of what was going on. He was aware of where his body was. He was aware of where the suspect's body was at the entire situation the whole time. And it's obvious that the dude trains. I don't know if it was wrestling, jiu-jitsu. Well, there's clearly some jiu-jitsu in there because of the choke he went for and him maintaining that a good mount. He was able to regain control once he lost it. It was nice to watch. Good to see. And it just demonstrates. And honestly, all you need are a few months. I think 6 months of jiu-jitsu training could save an officer's life. 6 months. If he trained at least twice a week, it could do wonders for them. So it doesn't take long. It doesn't take a tremendous amount of time. And then refresher. Maybe I think that I would have loved it had Metro had something going on where you could attend as soon as you got off work. You can just drive down, maybe in about 2 or 3 places around town, and you can go when you get off work or before you come into work, you can go and train. I think that would have been tremendously beneficial. All right, what you got here, Dwayne? A quote I came across pertinent to this video: martial arts teaches us how to remain calm, even and especially in high pressure situations. And I can totally concur with that. And that's been my own experiences. In class, students can learn slowly in a safe, low-pressured environment and build their way up to increasing amounts of pressure. Man, this is so good. Spot on. In this way, they learn how to keep calm and focused on the task at hand, despite the chaos that may be surrounding them. It sounds simple, but that's it. At first, it may seem like total chaos. It's like when you go into a CrossFit gym. Now, you're pretty much wrecked almost every class. But there is a world of difference when it's the first day you go in that class and then you get crushed by a high-intensity workout. As compared to as time goes on and your conditioning increases, your fitness improves, your recovery improves, you may get smoked, but you'll recuperate quicker. And then your body is used to operating at that high intensity level. Today at the gym, threw together a little modified CrossFit workout. Just wanted to get that. Hadn't done it in a few months. I just wanted to get hammered like that, just get hit hard like that, and just remember how that feels. Because once you've been there and then you're there on a consistent level, it's the difference between doing force-on-force training as an officer or a soldier and not doing it. And because even in training, there's a certain level of stress. You don't want to look bad in front of your peers, or you want to perform. You want to catch the simulated bad guy. And you still get the heart racing a bit. If you're doing martial arts and you're sparring, you're building up to sparring, you get used to punches coming your way, someone trying to take you down, someone trying to submit you, hyperextend the joint, choke you out. You get used to that. And you start thinking your way through as opposed to reacting. And then if you've never been there, the exhaustion will hit so fast. Your head will spin. It'll hit you so quickly. But having been there, you're tired, you're breathing hard, but you're calm, you're focused. You know what you're trying to do. Okay, he's going for my arm. I need to protect that arm, and I need to transition to a different position. Or maybe I'm willing to give up that arm, have him go for it, so then I could, because I can't get out of the current position, then maybe I could transfer out as he tries to go for a submission. There's so many ways that your brain works once you've operated at that level. And I agree, it should be mandatory. I honestly believe it should be mandatory. I like it. Too bad more people don't like it, don't agree. The union doesn't care about that as long as you pay your dues, and then the fund is used to pass laws that favor the sloth. Yeah, Sad and unfortunate reality. The officer in the video did not have to use lethal force because of the control he was able to maintain. That's it, bro. Man, that's it. I'm going to talk about an incident that took place on Metro, and I'm going to try to be as vague as possible. I can recall an incident that took place some years back, and I was very familiar with this officer, and I knew that he had a perpetual he had no desire to train. None. And some of y'all may have heard me share this story before, but my man had no desire to train, no desire to push hard. He was still a young man. I don't even think he was 30 yet. But if you looked at him, I mean, dude is like never hit the gym. He goes on a call escalates. He tries to use some of his tools. The suspect knocks the tools away. Dude had nothing left. Nothing left. He didn't train any defensive tactics, any martial arts. Wasn't in good physical shape. Once his taser was out of the picture, in his mind, the only thing he had left was deadly force. In his mind. That was all he had left. So he ended up shooting the guy, killed the guy. Crazy part about it was he and I had words a few months prior. After completing a Krav Maga course that the department had set up, where if you're a defensive tactics instructor, you can go and do a Krav Maga course. I went to it, loved it. It's about 2 or 3 days, loved it. Was sharing some of the techniques with my squad and our sister squad. That very officer looked at me and was like, Muldrow, you're not in the jail anymore. You know, we have other ways that we deal with problems out here. And I looked at him and I said, dude, I hope to God you never come in contact with anybody where you actually have to fight somebody. I said, because you couldn't fight your way out of a wet paper bag. 2-3 months later, that incident I just explained to y'all took place. He walked in there with minimal skills, minimal tools, other than what he had on his waist. And as soon as the crap hit the fan, he had no choice but to escalate to deadly force. I had a sergeant, one of the supervisors looked at me and he said, I can't help but think that if you and I were on that call, that guy would still be alive today. Take that for what it's worth. Now, none of us can predict how we would have handled that call. None of us. I don't know. I might have ended up pulling out my gun on that dude. Who knows? But I'll tell you this much. I ain't John Jones and I ain't Francis Ngannou, but I can handle myself in most situations because, and I say that not as an ego thing, but because I've been in plenty of physical confrontations where I was able to handle myself quite well. Multiple occasions, jail, streets, handle myself quite well. Ain't the baddest dude in the world, but I made a point to focus on my fitness. As I spoke about last week, I made a point to make sure that my fighting skills were sharpened. They stayed sharp. So again, I can't say either way what went down had I been there, but I think that things probably, or there's a high likelihood that things would have ended up differently because we had different mindsets. He looked at things one way. He wasn't motivated to really take care of himself physically, but where I thought about that stuff all the time. Even today, retired for, what is it? I retired almost going on 8 years. I've been retired. Still, when I go to Walmart, when I get in my car in the morning, when I go outside, I'm always thinking what's going on around me. Who's around that corner? Who's down the street? Is there anyone waiting on the side of my house? I still think like that. I still think just my mindset when it comes to being out in the public is probably just as sharp as it was when I was on the streets. Now, I might have dulled a little bit, but I'm not a fool as to the dangers that are out there, especially trying to maintain a channel like this. Trying to maintain a channel like Code Red Conversations, where I'm constantly seeing officers getting their butts handed to them. I think about that stuff all the time because it's the reality of what I see. And I talk about and I unpack these things because I want cops to be able to survive. I want people to be able to better understand why an officer used the force that they used. But I also want officers to be so skilled and so fit that the average citizen is going to look at them and say, first of all, I don't even want to mess with this dude because he'll probably whoop me. And if he goes there, an officer can use the necessary force to subdue a suspect. And at times that may mean that the officer has to use deadly force. But the more skills you have, the more quote unquote tools on your tool belt, meaning physically and as well as tactically, skill wise, the less need you will, the less likely you'll be to go to deadly force. I thoroughly believe that. Thoroughly believe that. He stayed heavy, right, Larry? He was on top of him. Dude couldn't do anything. Oh, boy stayed heavy with our boy up at the gym. He was done. My man was spent. Another quote I came across: the average police academy in the U.S. lasts 13 to 19 weeks with a maximum of 6 months. My academy was 26 weeks, but that's about accurate. During this time, recruits typically receive 168 hours of training for weapons, defensive tactics, and use of force. However, 70 hours of that is reserved for firearms, leaving roughly 60 hours for self-defense. Once graduated, officers are required to maintain a standard and training by attending approximately 8 hours of defensive tact training every 2 years. Yeah, that's pretty sad. Just let that marinate a bit. Excuse me. Yeah, a lot of these plays, and then even then, I'm sure Larry can attest to this. We were allotted one training day or at least half a day twice a month. And how many times I can tell you the majority of training days were canceled because the shift was just too busy. Our co-workers were out on the streets and they were going call to call. It was just too busy. And so I would have an elaborate training set up for our guys or try to go up to the range and shoot or whatever, work on our DTs, defensive tactics. And it was just too busy and we had to cancel them. We had to dress out and we had to go and start taking calls. Now, I think I understand that ultimately the job of a cop is to police, is to fight crime. But without the ability to sharpen those tools, those skills, you're gonna have bad incidents like the one we saw earlier and the one I'm about to show y'all. Training is vital. So for me, instead of arguing and saying, well, if the department wants us to do this, they'll pay for it themselves, which I agree, but also realize that probably wasn't going to happen. So my mindset was, all I can do is take care of myself. All I can do is do what I have to do to make sure that I make it home, my partner makes it home, and the citizen is okay, safely. That's all, the only thing I can control is what I do personally. So that's why I would train on the outside. And I made a priority of that. Or on my days off, I go up to the range and shoot. We didn't have the benefit of being on the SWAT team where you get a training day every week. We didn't have that. When you're a corrections officer or and I think in the jail it was even less. I think you might have got a training day, maybe a month and just a few hours, if that. So yeah, I think if that in the county jail. So it was a constant, my persistent mentality was do what you can on your own time. If that means you come out of pocket, so be it. Forget all the other stuff, man. I got kids, man. I got a family that's dependent on me. I'm going to do what I can to make sure that they're squared away, that they're taken care of. All right. Let me see. Let's play this one here. Fight conditioning is just different. You ain't lying, bro. You have to fight, spar to get it. I've seen marathon runners gas out halfway through a Krav class. Absolutely. Because there's a different energy system. You're talking about anaerobic energy or system. The anaerobic system, which is more a higher intensity level, more sprint like, as opposed to you're running 5 miles in an hour. Yeah, I'm not saying there's no correlation. I think there definitely is, but it's worlds difference. There's a world of difference between the two. That's why I think that you need a good balance, because you might be in a situation like I showed last week and if you hadn't watched that video last week, go check out Unfit for Duty, or I think that was the title. Go check out that video, that longer extended shows. I'm really proud of it because we had a lot of good feedback from the audience, and it was just very extremely beneficial, extremely helpful, because you had that one video where the guy ran 6 miles. He's out of Baltimore PD, runs 6 miles every other day. And he had a suspect that they were tailing, that they were chasing, get out of his car, take off running, and dude just ran him down. So I think you need all of that. It can't be one or the other. I would say if you had to have one, if you're in a jiu-jitsu class, or you're in a Krav Maga class, or you're doing Muay Thai, there'll be a correlation of fitness that'll pass over, because you're working on your skill as well as your conditioning. Now, if you're simply fit, that's better than nothing, but you got to be able to do something with that fitness. You have to be able to control a resistant body, a suspect or inmate who just ain't trying to comply. So I think it's important to do both. And before I leave here today, I'll go back over. I mentioned it. I'll go back over what I think are the best skills, the best arts. If I had to pick two, I'll tell you what I think are the best, especially if you find a good school, because of the application, how it correlates to the streets. And I'm going to tell you right offhand, it may not be what you think, but stay tuned. All right, let me show you another video here, y'all. I posted on this one a couple of years ago when I first started doing Code Red. I posted on this one. And it got a lot of traction. A lot of people picked up on this one. But it says so much. There's so much going on here. Hopefully it'll let me play. This thing's been acting up. It's going to probably go back and play that stupid video. Yep, it's acting up on me. This ain't the one I want to play. I don't know why this thing is not cooperating with me today. Keeps going back to a video, something totally different. Excuse me, y'all. Sorry about that. Clicked on the wrong button. Let's see if I can find these videos. This is really irritating me. Let me see if I can find this. I really want to show this one. This one here is very, very important. Let me pull it up and just do a quick search. But put your comments down below, guys. I know I didn't read all of them, but type your comments down below as I search for this video. Hold on 1 second. Got to do a separate search because this thing is acting up. All right. Now, hopefully, This will be it. And I won't have any issue, hopefully. All right, let's click on it, see what happens. Boy. Yeah. I don't know why this is acting up on me this week. I don't know what's going on, y'all. Forgive me for that. I apologize. Let's read some of the comments here while this is having its own mind today. There's another video of the same incident. Let's see if I can pull this one up here. It's a shorter version. I wanted the full video. Yeah, now this one's showing. Okay. I'm not, yeah, this is the incident right here. Hopefully, let me bring this up here. The one I saved, I was watching it last night. The one I saved is not showing for some reason, but I found another one. So hopefully this has all the details and shows everything that I'm looking to share with y'all. All right, this was a few years back, 2017.
Are associated with the traffic citation. Okay. Okay. Are you okay? All right. I mean, it's okay. Do me a favor. Come over here. Then place your hands behind.
All right, let me just say this much. You have a officer who doesn't look very big on the right, who's actually in physical contact with the suspect. And it looks as if this is a guy in field training because the other officer is just sitting back and kind of watching. So I got the impression that this was the field training officer on the left and a trainee on the right. I could be totally wrong, but that's the impression I got. But the other officer, the second officer, secondary officer, he doesn't look like a little dude. But let's just let this play out and let's see how this goes down.
Your back. What? Hey, place your hands.
Stop resisting!
I got him. Keep the taser on.
Stop resisting!
Okay, well, the video cuts out a lot. There was a lot of transition in the middle. Suspect is on the ground. They're attempting to cuff him, and he even says, all right, like he wants them to stop. But he manages to fight these two officers off, get back to his feet. Let me back up a second, y'all, so y'all can see how that went down. He was on the ground, tased. Look at him. He's up. They're throwing strikes. Nothing. Dude runs off, gets back to his car, and watch what happens. Both officers were hit. The one, if I'm not or definitely the one right here, the bigger one went over. He was definitely hit. They're still shooting at each other. You see his back window shot out. Well, the suspect was ultimately caught. And that one officer that I'm confident of, one officer was shot. He ended up back up a road, arrived, and they took him to the hospital, and he survived. And the suspect was caught and tried and convicted. But they were in the dominant position. You had 2 officers who were in the dominant position with this guy. And if you see the full video, the dude could barely pass a field sobriety test. Barely passed a field sobriety test. His balance was shot. It was terrible. But once he knew he was getting ready to get arrested, dude was able to fight these 2 officers off violently on the ground, back up, fight his way off, get back into his car. And that's another point, another fact that I want to bring up. People always freak out and wonder, why is it such a big deal? He just went to his car. What's the big deal? Case in point, right here. The suspect's vehicle is an unknown entity, an unknown factor. You have no idea what they have in their vehicle. Jacob Blake, for instance, well, he had a knife in his hand, but who knows if he was going back to his car to grab a gun. This guy sure did. Did those officers assume that he was going to go reach in his car, pull out a gun and shoot? They probably thought he might jump in the car and take off. But next thing you know, they're in a gunfight for their lives. But that's a different point for a different video. But I just want people to start thinking about these things. Police work ain't no joke, regardless of what side you're on. If you're the suspect, you're the citizen. It's not a joke. It's nothing to play around with. Or you're the officer. Law enforcement in general. I don't want to leave out my CO buddies or bailiffs or marshals or wherever people work. Law enforcement is not a game. It's not something to get in because you think it's cool. The reality is you could be fighting for your life in an instant. That's the reality of the job. And if you don't look at it like that, then don't get in it. Or if you're in it and you think like that, then get out. That's exactly how I feel. Exactly how I feel. Because too many officers are complacent with it and aren't willing to prep themselves and prepare themselves on a consistent basis. Man, I got some buddies of mine that, man, they would spend, I don't know how much money they spend on a monthly basis to take care of themselves, to go to training, traveling to different cities, different states to make sure that they were proficient. But that was the rarity. That was the anomaly. Most cops are too busy worried about buying a new truck so they can keep up with their neighbor or keep up with their buddy on the same squad or planning their next vacation to really go the extra mile and be ready. It's nuts. What you got here, brother? We do 5-minute rolls the last half hour of class, about 5 rolls of hard cardio. So you're talking about 25 minutes, 30 minutes where you just, and man, and that's brutal. That's brutal, especially when you're just trying to get back in the swing of things. And as you progress, it stays tough. It's nothing to play around with. But man, the confidence, tell them about it, Larry, the confidence that you had on the job. How did it feel? How confident were you? Not in every situation, obviously, but when dealing with an idiot who's trying to be a little aggressive. I'm sure you felt pretty good. I'm sure you felt as if you can handle yourself in the majority of situations. Obviously not all, because none of us are bad like that. But really wild. Really wild. What are your thoughts on that video y'all just saw? Political correctness says you are not allowed to make judgment on a person's physical abilities. It's in, yeah. But that's what I'm doing. If somebody here is offended by me talking about it, tune off, tune out. Because I know for a fact, and I know you're just saying that having fun there, Don, but if we're not willing to be honest with our physical limitations and our tactical skills and actually any aspect of our lives, if we're not willing to be honest, then who are we kidding? Like, what are we doing? All right. 2 ditches. First, you dealt with last week. 1, overweight and out of shape cops. The other, those who are small, no muscle mass, short. And these 2, especially regarding size, as it matters on the ground, need tools of the physical nature to help save their life. Absolutely. Because you had one dude who was big and he looked as if he was physically imposing, but you had a guy who was intent on getting away. And it was obvious because there's one point where the dude is on his knees, the suspect, And man, me and Larry were talking about it I first posted this video. Like, dude's neck is exposed. Man, I'm on that. I'm taking you down. I'm putting you to sleep. Sorry. Nighty night. Down. Or you're giving up and you're doing what I'm telling you to do. But they weren't thinking like that. Not to mention that the vehicle itself is a weapon and has been used on many has been used as one many times. Absolutely. Absolutely. What up, Ray? Come on, bro. You know how it is. Cops are too complacent. You got to have the mindset and the conditioning. Absolutely, man. I was going to reach out to you, man, ask you if you want to come on live with me on this show. But, man, and maybe me, you, Larry, maybe if y'all want to get on one day, we'll just do like a round table discussion on this topic or another similar topic. And we can share some war stories. But complacency is killing the fields in law enforcement. Killing the field. I mean, not as bad as this whole social justice and woke culture. That's the worst thing that's happening to law enforcement today. But on the other end, man, sometimes we're our worst enemy as cops. We are our worst enemy as cops. And it drives me nuts, drives me crazy. The stupid decisions we make and the complacency and the laziness. Oh, my gosh. Irritating. I actually owe it to you. You told my butt to train for years. I had less blue teams, which are use of force reports, because of the confidence. Right, man. I'm sure you had somebody in Ray the same way, because I know you box and I know you train. We were in that Krav Maga class together. I know that the way we set up, the way we felt as officers who were trained, man, and Ray ain't the biggest dude in the world, but I know how he interacted with people. Somebody talking crazy, he'd laugh it off until it got crazy. And then okay, all right, I got to put my hands on you. Now it's really going to go bad for you, because I wasn't thinking about doing that before, but now you're being ignorant, and now I got to put you on the ground and control you, handcuff you, rough you up a bit. We could have avoided all of this. The big officer was actually strong enough to ragdoll the suspect. Neither one was skilled enough, however, to sufficiently subdue him. Skill is so vitally important. And which goes back to what I was saying. It's more than just your physical fitness. That's extremely important, absolutely vital. But you have to have a skill set to be able to control a combative suspect. You need that. There's no getting around it. Speed and violence of action. We got to move quick. That's it, man. So again, we spoke about it last week. What would I suggest? What would my suggestions be when it comes to self-defense, defensive tactics? Personally, I'm a huge advocate of Brazilian jiu-jitsu, but I know that I've been to a lot of schools that didn't teach the transition point between the stand-up game and the ground. You start rolling on your knees in a lot of schools. And in the real world, that's not where you are. You start off on the feet. Now, if you don't have a wrestling base from school, college, or wherever, or maybe someplace that you train, if you can find a solid judo school that actually teaches more, that focuses on the stand-up throws, that's pretty much where judo has its strength, the throws, the takedowns, the sweeps, but also has an emphasis on your ground skills, submissions, positioning, side control, mount, guard, how you fighting from your guard. I personally would emphasize a well-rounded judo school above a Brazilian jiu-jitsu school. That would be my top suggestion when it comes to grappling art. And second, and I know a lot of guys will suggest Muay Thai and boxing, but in law enforcement, because that's what we're talking about here primarily. In law enforcement, You're not necessarily there to box somebody. Now, there may come a time where you have to do that, but you have to have a deeper set of tools. So I would recommend an art more like Krav Maga, where a good Krav Maga school, because I mean, any school we're talking about, you can have good ones or bad ones. But my mindset is Krav is pretty well-rounded because it teaches you weapons and weaponless defense, weapon takeaways, gun takeaways, things like that. But it also teaches you to be aggressive. It teaches physical fitness. It teaches your basic strikes, punches, knees, elbows, kicks, all those things. And I think just for the overall application of it, when it comes, I think it would look better for you to throw an elbow and then maybe work an arm bar if you're dealing with a suspect like that, as opposed to if all you did was box or all you did was Muay Thai, where it's damage, everything is damage. I think that an art that is more applicable to law enforcement in general is more like a Krav Maga or even a Jeet Kune Do. If you find a good Jeet Kune Do concept school that teaches multiple ranges of combat, weapons, weaponless defense, various things like that, I think that those things are more beneficial personally. Now, I'm not putting down or trying to dissuade someone or persuade someone not to train in Muay Thai or box, because I've done both and they are highly effective arts. I'm talking about one, the way it looks in the public, and the overall skill set that you get and how it applies to a career field such as law enforcement or even security on different levels. Those are my thoughts. All right, what we got here? Brutal truth. The department didn't pay for it, or I didn't have time, are not very palatable explanations for killing a suspect or losing your life because you didn't train. I'm with you, brother. I'm with you. Sadly, some people, that's good enough. Or because I recall me and this one dude, we would go to the range and we would go practice shooting every Tuesday. Monday was our Friday. Tuesday, we were up at the range practicing shooting. We put the invite out to everyone at our squad. Both of us were firearms instructors. So we're like, if you want to improve, if you want to get better, come on up. We're going to be up there probably 2 hours. So just come on up and we'll work with you. And we were over there training ourselves to improve. I think we were going there pretty consistently for about 1.5 years, 2 years. We may have had 2 or 3 people show up in that 2-year period. Too many other people like, I don't have time. We would laugh about it while we were up there. And not because it was funny, but just how sad it really was. All right, what we got here? I agree. I took judo for about 1 year and was very good about. Yeah, I remember you said your son was doing about 1 year and was very good about it as you start on your feet, which makes a difference because that's where we always start. A lot of good trips and a lot of good throws, things that you can really do. They can be very effective. That can be very effective. Absolutely. I love Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It gave me a high level of confidence in my grappling skills because I didn't wrestle in school. And I knew I had a hole that I needed to shore up. So once BJJ, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, got popular and schools started growing and the prices came down a bit, capitalism at its best, the prices came down and you were able to get in there without having to pay $50 a class, because there was actually a school here in Vegas, Helson Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, where I first went there. I asked them what their prices were and they said $50 a class. But then later on, another school popped up, another school popped up, another school popped up, and they were forced to bring their prices down. And I gained a tremendous amount of confidence. But then down the road, I started doing judo. I attended there was a guy who trained at a Gold's Gym, and he taught judo and boxing. And he had judo where you didn't have a gi. And I learned so many sweeps and throws. I had a pretty good base when it came down to throws anyway from my old karate. The style of karate that I learned was a combination of traditional Japanese jiu-jitsu and karate. And then I had another guy who was another one of the brown belts, more advanced guys at my old karate school when I was in high school. He was a Hapkido practitioner. And Hapkido is basically Taekwondo combined with Judo. So I learned a ton of throws all the time. And this was before the ground game was popular. So I was able to carry those basically throughout my whole life and my law enforcement career. But then I got refreshed once I started training jiu-jitsu again, started training judo again, and it is so applicable. Wrestling is good. I think wrestling is good on so many levels, but I don't think you'll necessarily want to shoot in every encounter. I think there are times where you may just be, you'll be attempting to secure someone, handcuff them, restrain them, and before you know it, they're struggling, and a good leg sweep or something like that is all you need. And I think that's where the application is better than most jiu-jitsu schools that I'm familiar with. Now, you guys may have different experiences, but most Brazilian jiu-jitsu schools that I'm familiar with, when you start grappling at the end of your class, you're starting on your knees. And I know it's a safety thing, but there wasn't a whole lot taught as far as takedowns. And that's where I think Brazilian jiu-jitsu is a little lacking. Law enforcement understandably requires more of a grappling and self-defensive tool set. Exactly. Kenmore is excellent for that overall. Hand-to-hand. Kenmore, you mean Kenpo? Is that what you're thinking? Because Kenmore, I think they make refrigerators. I think I know what you mean. Yeah, Kenpo is excellent. The police department has to return to non-PC physical standards, at least for field officers. I agree. Undersized or oversized individuals do not deter criminals in the field. Under duress, a physically sound and mentally alert individual is needed to properly make a criminal decide fight flight is not a viable option. I agree, man. Well said, George. Appreciate that. Well said. Judo is great. My academy in San Diego taught both. Man, like that's it. Like honestly, if you were in a school where you learned judo and Brazilian jiu-jitsu, you're deadly. You can be deadly. That may not be the proper term for talking about policing, but I think you guys know what I'm saying. You could be very dangerous. And then if you have some hand skills, to be able to move in, because you may end up in a boxing bout. You may end up in there, but then once the transition takes place between the striking and now you're in grappling range, oh, it's game over. It's game over. He said, I did it for a few months, but the throws were brutal on my old body. Hey, they didn't have a crash mat. They just needed to have a crash mat. Them big old thick mats so you can land on. But I hear you, man. It's tough. It could be tough. But you probably had some skills. You picked up some skill that you can use if you ever had to, man. Delete the stupid autocorrect. I know what you meant, brother. Yeah, fellas. They did have one, but it's still. I hear you, man. I hear you, man. Getting old sucks, but the things we can do to mitigate it. It's funny because I told you about the stretching I do every morning, 30 minutes every morning. I'm listening to a good audiobook. I'm in a book by Francis Schaeffer, who I have mad respect for, as a matter of fact. He's a theologian from the 70s and 80s. This is one of his books right here. It says The God Who Is There. Phenomenal book as far as being able to defend the faith. That's not the one I'm actually listening to right now. It's called He Is There and He is Not Silent. That's the one I'm reading or listening to right now. Amazing book. But in the morning, I'm getting my stretch on. And I got my timer going on the other side. So I hold each stretch for like 2 minutes. And it was funny because my daughter and I were at the gym and we're doing sprint drills, doing like 1 minute. Was it 1 minute, 2 minute sprints? Not for 2 minutes, but you know what I mean? We're cranking it out pretty good. And we did about 6 of those for 2 minutes, for 2 minutes with a 2-minute rest. And she's 25 years old and she was wrecked the next day. And none of us have done sprints in a while. So I had a little soreness, but she was hurting. And I think that the big difference was the fact that since I've been doing my stretches now 6 weeks, maybe longer, I finished probably about 3 audiobooks during that time. So I've been doing my stretches probably good 6-7 weeks now. And then my flexibility has increased, which therefore transfers over to my resiliency. So I stretch in the morning, and then once I go to the gym, I do my warm-up, and then I do another 10, 15-minute, a little bit more dynamic, or maybe weight-resisted stretch, just different movements. And, man, that's making me – I just feel better. 51 years old. Right now, I feel in the best I've had in years. And I think that has a lot to do with, well, obviously my diet and the way I'm eating, the way I try to take care of myself, but just taking that time to stretch out these old beat up joints. It feels good. I just make a priority of it. Just deep stretches. And I'm doing that knees over toes routine. They have a book. And I'm doing the whole knees over toes. If you're not familiar with that, when it comes down to your joint health and things like that, I've been working that, and it feels so good. And it kind of sucks at times, but I'm starting to see the benefits of it by applying that over the long term. What you got here, Ray? Also with jiu-jitsu, the good thing is they teach you how to get out of being taken down. You don't want to be taken down. Do you want to have the sprawl? You want to know how to get away from getting to the ground. Away from getting to the ground makes sense. Yeah, they teach you how to transition. You don't want to be on the bottom. Who wants to be on the bottom on the streets with some dude is just wailing on you? Or in all actuality, on the streets or in a jail or in a fight with anybody who has ill intent, you really don't want to be on the ground. That is not a good position to be in. I've seen too many videos where a guy takes someone to the ground, his buddy comes along and kicks him in the head and knocks him out. You really don't want to be there. But if you're there and you're under control and you know what's going on, you can be aware of what's going on around you. There have been times where I did that. You took someone to the ground and you're still aware of your surroundings. And you're able to be more aware because of the confidence that you get from one of the grappling arts. Now, there are multiple grappling arts. You got Sambo, Judo, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, shoot wrestling. Very beneficial. And if you're used to being there, used to grinding and sweating it out, you're typically not going to panic. Yeah, I love Schaefer. Oh, Dwayne's got something in. He's got fighter philosophy. Why law enforcement should train in martial arts. So if you guys want to check out that link in the chat, that'd be great. Appreciate you posting that in there. I'm definitely going to check that one out. Lucha Libre, like, are you talking about pro wrestling or are you talking about the anything goes thing? All right, brother. Appreciate you being here, man. The show's about to be over anyway. All right, y'all. If you have we're about to wrap it up here. If you have any comments or suggestions or ideas for something you would like to see down the road, feel free to send some to me. You can put some in the chat. You can text me. You can message me. However, Dwayne, you sent me you sent me a couple of videos or sent me a video. And I definitely plan on, I'm not sure if I'm gonna do a short form video or do a show around it. But some of y'all are sending me content and it is excellent. And I truly, truly appreciate it. Do me a favor, y'all. Share this if you can. Tag your buddies. If you know anyone who's thinking about getting into law enforcement or who is in law enforcement, send it to them. Or just anyone who is a supporter of law enforcement, or even those who don't like law enforcement. They might learn something here. Share this content. I would be greatly appreciative of that. I try to do these so I can be helpful to the general public and helpful to the average officer who might have decided to slack a little bit maybe I can give them a little encouragement to get back into training or to start training for the first time. But I appreciate y'all jumping in. Do me a favor. Thank you, dear. Do me a favor. If you could head on over to coderedconversations.com, check out what I got going on there. Go to shop, support what it is I'm doing. Pick up a t-shirt, Code Red Conversations t-shirt. I have a couple of different styles. I have one shirt, Unwoke to the World. I love that shirt. I'm actually going to post some images of it on my Facebook page and on YouTube. Just help me support what it is I'm trying to do. I really want to see Code Red grow. I really want to see Code Red grow to where I'm actually traveling around the country and I'm speaking to people the truth on policing and on law enforcement. And by God's grace, I'll be able to change minds and get people to think a little bit differently and not just assume everything the media, many aspects of the mainstream media tells them. So if you can do me a favor, if you can do that, I would greatly appreciate it. I plan on being here Friday. I'm working on the topic. So I'll keep it a secret right now. You'll know something tomorrow more than likely. Today I was a little late in sharing the content, but jump on in, be ready, pay attention to what's going on. I should be sharing Friday's topic with y'all shortly, and I'll have some other videos, shorter videos going out. As always, I appreciate y'all being here and supporting what it is I'm trying to do. And once again, before I roll, y'all know the routine.